All right, good afternoon, VIPs. Chapadong here. I want to run through a little bit more in depth of the research station and domination station in terms of what you guys might be doing as you've kind of learned a little bit of the stacking. You've learned a little bit of how to look at the slate as a whole with ITTs and whatnot the past couple of days. Note Chicago's a 3.5 today. Let's run through a little bit deeper. And let's say you say, oh, I like Chicago at the 3.5 ITT. Boston, I like 3.2, whatever. Edmonton's interesting with a 2.1. It's popping all over Domination Station, largely because of this, I'm sure. Boston is, if you look at DVP, I don't put DVP too much into consideration, but I will in a case of finding an elite defensive team like a Boston. That's a tough matchup for Edmonton. Now, it'd be very contrarian, and it might work. Domination Station's freaky sometimes. It sees stuff in matchups that just throws up red flags all over the place, and we should listen sometimes. It's hard to know when it recommends something that seems really, really off the wall. It's hard to know when to override your own logic and say, nope, the projections know something, I'm going with them. It's hard to think that tonight just blindly going with the projections isn't going to lead you in a little bit of a wrong direction with Edmonton, but I mean, Edmonton might score 3 goals tonight, and if they do, it probably is coming from that top line. So it would be lower owned in tournaments, and it would be worth a shot. If I was running 100 lineups in GPPs, I might put it in 10 or 15 lineups. Arizona, Dallas. Dallas is popping a little bit, which is interesting with a 2.8 ITT. Who else we got? 2.2, 3.2 for Florida. That's interesting. We know there's tons of value in Anaheim. Especially down here on line 3. That's a really, really good spot by our coaches. New York Islanders, Colorado Avalanche, 3.1. So let's just pick a few teams here. Let's just say we like Vancouver, Chicago, Anaheim, Boston. Okay, let's just pretend those are the teams. So you go through there and you figure those out, which ones you like. But let's dive into the skaters tab a little bit. And one thing that I would do, one thing that I like to do, this isn't the end all be all, but I'll walk you through a couple of things I like to look at. I scroll over to the right, I go to the last 5 games or the last 10 games, and I love this FD average or DK average. See how I've got the little arrow already on here? I've sorted it by descending order on FanDuel. So I've got Leon Draisaitl the last 5 games, has the highest FanDuel point average by a mile. McKinnon, Pastrnak, Fiala. How many of you knew Fiala was high on the list? Sagan, Yamamoto might surprise some people. Bergeron, Henrique, Pavelski. Now you can see why Henrique is high on the coaches' lists. Nugent Hopkins. You see a lot of Edmonton up there, which is just really interesting. They ran into an elite matchup tonight, which is why we don't usually, the old fine print on prospectuses and things from financial advisors. Past results do not indicate future performance. It's very true in a case of Edmonton tonight. Strome, Hughes, Ben. I mean, Jamie Benn. How often is that guy up on the list? Not too terribly often. Zib, Suter, Spurgeon, whatever. These are the guys that you could be looking at to be doing a lot of the production tonight. Okay, you could look at shots on goal and block shots, and what you could look at here is say 36 on 17 is a little unsustainable. The guy's been scoring some goals, and it bears out. 5 goals, 7 assists. That's where all these points are coming from. However, 30 shots on goal and blocked shots out of Nathan MacKinnon at 28 is much more sustainable because he's getting some of his production here. More of his production coming off of the stuff that he can repeat, stuff that is in his control. Whether or not he shoots the puck is kind of in his control. Whether or not the puck goes in the net is largely out of his control. Goalies make wild saves. Shots are 2 inches off and they hit the post. He wasn't open. He got tripped or hacked in the middle of it. Whatever. I mean, goals are harder to predict for sure. It's like we would look for a guy in baseball who hits the ball really hard repeatedly, and we know the home runs are going to come and go. This is the same thing. We look for a guy who shoots the puck repeatedly. We know the goals are going to come and go. Not getting the results right now that a Draisaitl is. So you could say one is sustainable, one is not, one's due for regression, the other's not, whatever. But I'm looking for, if I look for these types of numbers, if I look over here real quickly, low numbers make me think it's fluky. Higher numbers make me think it's more sustainable. So I'd be looking at guys, like cash game guys, McKinnon, who's this? Even a Fiala, 24 shots on goal. Here's the thing with Fiala: when they trade off a Zucker or somebody like that from Minnesota, and this guy assumes kind of a new role or is asked to do more, and then he starts doing more, it takes a while for pricing to catch up. You can see his shot floor has risen and his production has risen a little bit, and as a result, his price hasn't come up quite as fast. Therefore, the guy's providing good value. Is he tonight? I don't know. I'd like to make sure he's in a plus matchup tonight. but I can look at this for the price and say I can certainly do worse things. I have personally a lot of interest in Fiala tonight. Not so much some of these guys come down here a little bit lower to your Patty Kane and your Ryan Stroms. Stroms another one. This is what. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Patty Kane and Ryan Stroms. Stroms interesting because he's going to be cheap. Down here a little bit lower here, and I've got Troy Terry and Tyler Toffoli. So these are not terrible guys to be picking in your all format type plays. They can score 2 goals on any given night. They also have a high shot and block floor, which means they're relatively safe. Nobody is safe in hockey, but these guys are relatively safe. The other thing, they're safer than some of these other guys, so they would be smarter cash options. Now, if you're firing up GPPs, you're just you don't even care about this. You're just wanting biscuits in the basket, right? Another thing to look at is percentage of teams scoring. This is one of my favorite ones. I can take these big guns like your McKinnons, Draisaitl's, Pasternak's, whatever, and I can see who is doing the damage on the team. So that means that if that offense is in a good spot tonight, 70% of the time, Leon Draisaitl's involved in a goal. 60% of the time, Pasternak's involved in a goal. Those are big numbers. Those are cash plays. Those are reliable sources of scoring. I know the shot floor isn't as high for Draisaitl as it is McKinnon, but 70% of the team scoring means that if Edmonton scores 10 goals, Draisaitl factors into 7 of them on the average. That's huge. So you look for a plus matchup with Edmonton. Tonight's not it in Boston, but you look for a plus matchup, say, facing Detroit or something like that, and you're going to load up on Draisaitl because he is certainly worth more than whatever they're charging for him on DraftKings or FanDuel in spots like that. Now, in a spot like tonight, yes, he can have an outlier performance, drop a hat trick on us, but odds are his scoring should be a little bit suppressed because by the nature of Boston, they suppress other teams' scoring. Instead of scoring 3 or 4 goals, Edmonton might get 1 or 2. Sure, Draisaitl's probably going to be involved, but his ceiling is probably capped tonight at a lower number than usual, which means it takes a true outlier performance for him to really make a lot of sense. Now, again, if you're trying to beat 30,000 people, that type of a play makes a lot of sense. If you're only trying to place in the top half of, say, 100 people, that type of play carries a lot of risk. That's the type of cash versus GPP considerations that we talk about. Hopefully these concepts are starting to sink in. The more we talk about them, the more we mention them, the more you're starting to connect the dots with, oh, so when a guy has a high floor and a high ceiling, he's an all format play. But when he has a lower ceiling but still has an okay floor, he might be cash only, or he might actually be overpriced if he's one of those expensive studs. Yes, that's the fundamentals across any sport. Hockey, football, baseball, basketball, doesn't matter. Coming down, these are columns that I like to look at. Projections are okay. I might look at, it's what drives our domination station, obviously. I might look for who's bringing the most value tonight. Down in here, Yamamoto, McKinnon, Draisaitl, some of these guys. I'm looking for guys in the 2.5 range and above. So Sutter here might not be a bad play. Maybe some of these cheaper guys, we get a spike out of somebody like this down in here. 2.87 out of Nurse. It's another Edmonton guy, which is really intriguing. 2.6 out of is that Vatanen or is that Fox? Adam Fox of all people. I've not played that guy recently. I have no idea. 2.83 out of Matty Dumba. I mean, these are guys that might pop on your radar, and these are things that you should probably be looking at as well in terms of value. You see these guys running dark green, they should be considered. Now, what can you do? You can go into Domination Station, you can load these guys up. If I was playing around earlier with pairs, let's say I change this to 3, and then I run this off on a double stack. And the same thing that I'm going to do with a pair on that double stack is I'm going to include some of these teams that I was looking for tonight to stack up. And if it happens to run, 3x2 for 5 together, I don't care. It's not going to bother me. Anaheim, and let's go ahead and include, say, Colorado in this one. Vancouver too. Colorado, Florida, Vancouver. Let's do Vancouver for kicks, whatever. You can see how much thought I put into this when it comes to running lots and lots of lineups for GPPs. I'm really trying to hit my main stacks hard, and this other stuff is just nice if it surrounds it. It's nothing that I'm going to get too critical about or get too overblown about, especially when I'm just showing you guys as an example. When I set this up with these players, then I'm going to end up, I'm going to pause the video really quick and then come back and I'll show you how I set it up. So give me 2 seconds here. All right, thanks for that. The 2 packs that I set up here were from Chicago, Boston, Anaheim. Boston, Anaheim's the same. Chicago, I added these 4 guys. Vancouver, I added these 6. Let me show you how on Boston, how I found these particular guys. Again, Taves, Kane are correlated on the, they're all correlated on the power play 1, but I've got a couple line 1, couple line 2 guys in there. I go into the research station. I click off, if I was looking at Vancouver, I click off to Chicago, pull up all the Chicago guys. Remember, I'm already sorted by points per game on FanDuel for the last 5 games, and I'm looking for who jumps to the top. And I'm looking for the correlations in here. Notice Kane, Taves, Kubalik, and Saad. Boom, done, right? If I look at Vancouver, I don't have a big cutoff. I just take 3, 4, or 5 guys and make sure they're correlated. Hughes, power play 1, but Sutter on line 4. I don't very often take line 4 guys. I don't see the point. They don't get a lot of icing. This guy's hot and he's cheap. If you want to run him as a one-off or some kind of a punt player, include him. You're not going to include him in a stack. He doesn't have any power play time and he doesn't serve on the line with anybody. So he has to be a one-off somewhere. Take your chances, whatever. But somebody like Hughes, Toffoli, Miller, maybe Horvat, Patterson, some of these guys have a lot of talent. They're good, strong plays. Edler cracks me up. He doesn't have any power play time right now, but he's way too cheap, in my opinion, at 4,400 for what that guy provides. So I went ahead and included those guys in my domination station right now. I should get 3 of these guys and 2 of these guys. Anaheim, Boston, Anaheim, Chicago, Anaheim, Vancouver, Boston, Chicago, Boston, Anaheim, Boston, Vancouver, whatever. Mix and match, rock and roll. So I'm going to click optimize. I'm going to pause the video one more time. We'll come back and we'll check the results and I'll show you what we're doing. All right, notice a couple other things that I probably didn't tell you. 70% max exposure, and on goalies, I cut it down to about 40%. It's just what I do because I don't want, I spread my goalies out. Goalies are, I am of the mindset these days, I used to be very much your goalie's your most important piece. I'm very much a goalie's a crapshoot now, and so I don't care anymore. I don't even research goalies, don't even look at them, don't even care. Pinning down a shutout is pretty damn lucky. Getting the win is enough of a crapshoot. I have pulled out way too many hair follicles trying to chase which goalie is the best goalie on the screw it. Pick a few. Pick a few in good spots if you must. Otherwise, let the optimizers do it. Your chances, I swear, are just about as good as any. However, picking the stacks and picking the teams that go off, there's an art to that. I'm going to dive in and show you a little bit. Like I said, I ran a 3-stack in pairs. There's 3 Anaheim guys, Henrique, Terry, Lindholm, obviously all correlated 2 on line 2, but all 3 are on power play 2. McKinnon is a one-off. Francouz is the goalie. Fiala in there, that isn't necessarily me. I did like and adore some players earlier today. Sagan's in there, Pasternak's in there. You cannot argue this lineup. Edler's too cheap. So if the stack goes off, that's great. Where's my other pair? It does not look like it has in their pair. It's all one-offs. That's fine with me. A 3-stack with a bunch of one-offs, unless I'm not seeing the pair, is fine with me because look at the power in the one-offs. Edler's too cheap. Has a good chance at bringing some value here. Scores a goal, whatever. We're set up really nice. Pastrnak, hat trick and waiting. Sagan, hugest piece of the Dallas offense, no doubt about it. Fiala, hot streak, new role, underpriced. McKinnon can break a slate with anybody. This lineup's absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to change a thing. I'm going to scroll down here and I see, who do I see? 1, 2, 3 Canucks, Horvat, Patterson, Hughes. That's really interesting as a 3-stack because I didn't set that up as a 3-stack. I set that up as a 2-stack. So there should be a 3-stack in the other side of it, which would be, well, looks like a 2-stack of Oilers, then a one-off. This is interesting. I don't know why it's not listening to what I said, but I like it anyway. Vetrano's okay. Yamamoto's okay. Yamamoto and Nurse a little contrarian with Pastrnak, Sagan again. Quinn Hughes, Pedersen, Horvat are all correlated on the top power play unit. I'll run that lineup. 1, 2, 3 again. Henrique, Terry, Bergeron, Lindholm with Pastrnak and Bergeron paired up, and then Terry in there. Yamamoto in there as a one-off. Oh, Yamamoto Nurse. There's a 3-2-2 with Sagan as a one-off. Yes, please. I may swap out the goalie. I don't know. I'm looking for flaws in these lineups. Kane is a one-off. Erik Johnson. There's somebody I don't have on my list. Somebody I don't probably care about. Edler, Markstrom, fine. McKinnon, fine. Henrique, Terry, Silverberg are correlated on the power play too. That's fine. Sagan is a one-off. I would probably go into this lineup. I would probably make that edit for Johnson at 3,600. I might come down off of my goalie, come up at my defense to somebody like a Darnell Nurse or somebody that maybe has a little better floor than Johnson, and then take what I get with the goalie the rest of the way. These are things that I can do. I can either download the CSV file and throw it directly in, or I can go through and I can enter some of these lineups one by one and then make some swaps. Like if I went into FanDuel, entered this lineup because I knew I wanted to edit out the Erik Johnson play, then I would then come up and delete it from my batch when I was done. And then whatever I was left with, say I did that 4 or 5 times out of 25 lineups, then I would come back and I would run the other 20 lineups in there as a CSV file because I've already checked them. They're already pretty good. That's the editing portion. That's what you can rerun the domination station again and again and again and again and again. But when you finally start getting the majority of what you want in these types of scenarios, when you're at 20, 25, 30, 45 lineups, you're probably pretty manageable if you've got the time to walk through these things and double check them. Make sure they are what you want to see. That's where the art really comes into this. Because if you just run 150 lineups with the projections and say, throw it into the domination station, you've probably got 30, 40, 50 lineups in there that don't even have a shot. There's a lot of dead money wasted in people that just kind of throw that stuff in there. The true pros, the true studs, are walking through. They're really good at setting up the domination station from the get-go and then editing and editing and editing through this to know they're getting what they want over here, or they're taking the time to go through over here in a highly correlated sport like hockey and make sure it's getting what they want. So tonight I'm going to go through here, make sure it gets what it wants, and then I'll be back to talk more in Slack and stuff like that later after I toss some of these into the nickels or quarters or whatever the hell I decide to play tonight. Hopefully you guys are doing the same thing. Hopefully you're getting a lot out of this type of video. You don't have to like it. It's not a public video. It's VIP only. I'm just doing this to share with you guys a little bit of the process, a little bit of the digging, a little bit of how to set up some of the tools that we have here at DFS Army to give you guys a better fighting chance at being competitive too. All right, guys, peace out.